My parents humiliated me at my brother's wedding. So, I served them the perfect revenge. I'm 32. I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come from that humble food truck parked on campus corners. The gleaming stainless steel surfaces and precise movements of my team were a far cry from those early days of struggling to keep the generator running and praying the ancient refrigeration unit wouldn't fail. Chef, the Meyer wedding tasting is in 20 minutes, called out Maria, my assistant manager of 5 years. Thanks. I'll be right there, I replied, adjusting my chef's coat. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, 50 employees, countless events, and a reputation that had taken a decade to build. That reputation would soon be tested in ways I never imagined, all because of a wedding invitation that arrived on my desk one spring morning. Your brother's getting married, Maria said, handing me the elegant cream envelope. Her tone was careful. She knew my family history all too well. I stared at Mark's name in gold lettering, remembering the gap that had grown between us since our mother's death. The handwritten note inside brought back a flood of memories. Hey sis, I know it's been a while, but I miss you. I'm getting married and it wouldn't feel right without you there. Maybe it's time we tried to fix things. Love, Mark. The words transported me back to that terrible year when everything changed. I was 14, Mark just 10, when Mom died. The house felt empty without her laugh, her warmth, her presence. Then my stepmother, Jenny, arrived, and with her came the systematic erasure of everything that remained of our mother. I remember standing in the hallway, watching Jenny take down Mom's favorite painting, a watercolor of the lake, where we used to spend our summers. Mom had bought it from a local artist, and I could still remember her joy when she found the perfect spot for it. This doesn't match the new decor, Jenny had said dismissively, not even bothering to handle it carefully as she removed it from the wall. But Mom loved that painting, I protested, my voice catching. She always said it reminded her of our family vacations. Jenny's response was cold, her eyes narrowing as she turned to face me. Well, she's not here anymore, is she? Things change. You need to accept that. Your father and I are trying to make a fresh start, and you're making it more difficult than it needs to be. Dad, desperate to move forward, backed her at every turn. I can still see him standing in the doorway, shoulders slumped, avoiding my pleading gaze. Jenny's trying to make this a home again, he'd say, his voice tired and distant. Can't you try to help instead of fighting everything? But I couldn't help fighting. Every photo removed, every memory erased felt like losing Mom all over again. Mark adapted, found comfort in Jenny's attention, but I remained the outsider, the reminder of what they wanted to forget. I watched as my little brother gradually shifted allegiance, drawn in by Jenny's promises of a normal family life. The changes came rapidly after that. Mom's garden, which she'd tenderly maintained even during her illness, was ripped out for a modern landscape design. Her recipe books, filled with handwritten notes and family secrets, disappeared during a kitchen reorganization. Each loss felt like a physical blow. College brought its own battles, marking the final fracture in our family dynamics. I can still hear the arguments about money echoing through our house. Dad, I just need help with the first semester's tuition, I'd pleaded, standing in his home office with acceptance letters and financial aid forms spread across his desk. I've already lined up 2 part-time jobs for the rest of it. He barely looked up from his computer. You need to learn responsibility, he'd replied, while writing another check for Mark's private university. Your brother takes his education seriously. He has a plan, goals. What do you have? Vague ideas about cooking? Those words stung, but they also fueled me. The food truck wasn't just a business. It was my declaration of independence. Starting with borrowed equipment and recipes learned at Mom's side, I built something of my own. Those first few months were brutal. I'd work my other jobs during the day, then spend evenings and nights serving comfort food to hungry students. Every penny went back into the business. I remember the first time I catered a real event, a professor's retirement party. My hands shook as I prepared the appetizers in my tiny food truck kitchen, but the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. That success led to more bookings, and slowly, my reputation grew. Jenny's disdain was relentless throughout this period. At every family gathering she could convince me to attend, she'd find ways to diminish my achievements. Still playing with your little food truck? She'd say, swirling her wine glass while holding court. in her perfectly decorated living room. Mark's getting his MBA, you know. A real career. Though I suppose someone has to feed all those students. Her friends would titter politely, while I swallowed my anger and reminded myself that success would be the best revenge. 6 years ago, everything came to a head. I'd been at a catering event when my phone buzzed with a text from our old neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. "Did you know they're selling the house? There's a dumpster in the driveway. I think they're throwing out a lot of your mom's things." I drove there immediately, breaking every speed limit, only to find a sold sign on the lawn, and a dumpster filled with the last traces of Mom's life, photos, letters, the quilt she'd made during her final months. Gone. I stood there in the drizzling rain, digging through the debris, trying to salvage anything I could. The confrontation with Dad was brutal. "How could you do this without telling me?" I demanded, voice shaking, holding Mom's water-damaged recipe book. These were her things. Our memories. "You didn't even give me a chance to keep them." "It's just stuff," he'd replied, Jenny nodding beside him like a well-trained puppet. "You need to move on. We all have. Why can't you?" That was the last time I spoke to them, until Mark's wedding invitation arrived. Maria watched me reading the note, concern etched on her face. "Are you going to go?" I folded the invitation carefully, running my fingers along the creases. "Yes. And I'm going to offer to cater it." "Are you sure that's wise?" she asked, leaning against my desk. "After everything they've done?" "Probably not," I admitted, thinking of all the potential ways it could go wrong. "But he's my brother. And maybe it's time to try building bridges instead of burning them." The offer was declined politely, but firmly. "We've already booked someone," Mark explained over the phone, his voice apologetic but firm. "But I'm really glad you're coming. It means a lot to me." The wedding venue was stunning, a historic mansion in Lake Forest, all marble and gilt. Walking up the sweeping driveway, I felt underdressed despite my carefully chosen outfit. Mark's face lit up when he saw me at the ceremony. "You came?" he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that felt both familiar and strange. "I wasn't sure you would." The moment was short-lived. Jenny appeared, designer dress rustling, eyes sharp as she assessed me. "Oh, you actually showed up," she said, looking me up and down with calculated disdain. "I'm surprised you could afford something appropriate to wear. Though I suppose your little business must be doing well enough to manage at least that." I forced a smile, determined not to let her ruin this attempt at reconciliation. "Hello, Jenny. The venue is beautiful. You and Mark's fiancé did a wonderful job with the planning." The seating arrangement spoke volumes. I was tucked away at a distant table with cousins I barely recognized. One of them, Amy, who I vaguely remembered from childhood summers, leaned over during the salad course. "This is ridiculous," she whispered, glancing at the family table where Jenny held court. "You should be up there with them. You're his sister." I shrugged, trying to maintain dignity. "It's fine. I'm just here for Mark." But it wasn't fine. Dad, several drinks in, made sure of that. He stumbled to our table during the reception, face flushed with alcohol and anger. "Who invited you?" he slurred, pointing an unsteady finger. "Always trying to ruin everything. Showing up where you're not wanted, making people uncomfortable." "I have an invitation," I said quietly, conscious of the stares around us. I pulled it from my clutch, but he batted it away. "A mistake," Jenny chimed in, appearing at his side like a malevolent shadow. "Though I suppose you needed a break from your little kitchen experiments. How is the food truck business? Still serving hot dogs to drunk college students?" The deliberate ignorance of my success was the final straw. I stood, gathering my purse. "I think it's time for me to go." That's when I saw them, my own catering vans pulling up to the service entrance. The company Mark had hired, Golden Gate Catering, was one I'd acquired just months before in a private deal. The irony was perfect. One call to my operations manager confirmed it. "Yes, chef, it's our crew. We're just starting dinner service now." The decision crystallized in that moment. If my presence was such an unwelcome intrusion, surely they wouldn't want my company providing their dinner. "Pack it up," I instructed, my voice steady. "All of it, now, chef. Are you sure?" "Completely sure." "Send in the emergency cancellation team. I want everything cleared within 15 minutes. The aftermath was chaos. 300 hungry guests. No main course, no dessert. Whispers spread through the crowd as servers quietly cleared half-set tables. Dad's face turned purple when he realized what was happening. "You can't do this," he roared, causing several nearby guests to jump. "This is sabotage." "Actually, I can," I replied calmly. "Check the contract's hostile behavior clause." Section 8, Paragraph 3. My company reserves the right to terminate service in cases of harassment or hostile behavior toward staff or ownership. I smiled sweetly. You really should read the fine print. Jenny's carefully maintained composure cracked. "You vindictive little—" "I'd be careful about what you say next," I cut in. "There are plenty of witnesses here." The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Mark's was the most painful. "You just proved Jenny right about you. I can't believe I thought you'd changed. Do you have any idea how humiliating this was? They had to order pizza for a black tie wedding." But there were other messages too. Amy wrote, "What they did to you was awful. You stood up for yourself, finally. Also, I'd love to book you for my daughter's wedding. Anyone who can execute an exit that professionally is someone I want to work with." A week later, Mark called again. His voice was different this time, softer, more like the little brother I remembered. "I'm sorry," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "I should have stood up for you. I've been a coward for years, watching them treat you like this." "Why didn't you?" I asked, the question I'd held back for years. "You knew what they were doing wasn't right." "Fear, I guess. Fear of rocking the boat, of losing Dad's approval, of ending up treated like you were. But watching you walk away at the wedding, I realized I've been losing my sister instead. That's worse than anything they could do to me." It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a start. Mark and his wife began couples counseling, working on setting boundaries with Jenny and Dad. The process was messy. Jenny's attempts to sabotage my business through false reviews and employee harassment required legal intervention, but it was a movement. 3 months after the wedding, I sat across from Mark in a quiet cafe, both of us older and perhaps a little wiser. "They're not going to change," he said, stirring his coffee absently. "But I have. I want my kids, when we have them, to know their aunt, to know about Mom. I'd like that." Standing in my kitchen again, watching another wedding being prepped, Maria caught my eye. "You okay, Chef?" I nodded, thinking of the latest text from Mark, asking to meet for coffee. "Yeah, I am. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them properly. Jenny still tries to cause trouble, but her influence has waned. The last time she attempted to contact my staff, my lawyer sent such a strongly worded cease and desist that even she got the message. Dad occasionally sends awkward emails, usually when he's been drinking, alternating between accusations and clumsy attempts at reconciliation. I've learned to let them go unanswered. The weight of family expectations had finally lifted. I'd built something of my own, something Mom would have been proud of. The proof was all around me, in the busy kitchen, the loyal staff, the full booking calendar. And maybe, just maybe, I was rebuilding something with Mark too. Life doesn't always give you the family you want, but it gives you the strength to create your own path. Looking around at my staff, my chosen family, I knew I'd found mine. The food truck might be long gone, but its spirit lived on in every event we catered, every client we served, every bridge we built or burned. And somewhere, I like to think Mom was watching, proud of the strength she taught me, even if she couldn't be here to see it herself.